The evening air carried a slight chill as Tom Reynolds locked up his aging Honda in the back lot of the Riverside Community Center. The parking lot was nearly empty now, just a few cars remaining after the night's talent showcase had wrapped up. He glanced at his watch, 9:15 p.m. The event had run longer than expected, but that was typical of these community gatherings. People lingered, chatting and congratulating the performers, reluctant to end the warm bubble of community spirit. Tom pulled his jacket tighter and grabbed his lunch bag from the passenger seat. At 42, he felt older than his years some days. Tonight was one of those nights. His back ached from the morning shift at the warehouse and his eyes felt heavy. But he couldn't afford to be tired. This night cleaning job at the community center was essential. Every dollar mattered when you were raising 2 kids on your own. 3 years had passed since he lost Karen to cancer. 3 years of learning to be both mom and dad to Lily and Ben, now 12 and 9. 3 years of patching together enough work to keep their modest home and make sure the kids still had some normalcy in their lives. Tom had promised Karen he would keep music in their home no matter what. Both kids were taking lessons now, Lily on violin, Ben on drums. The expense sometimes kept Tom up at night, but seeing them play, watching their faces light up with the same joy that had once filled Karen's, made every sacrifice worthwhile. Evening, Tom. The cheerful voice belonged to Rita, the center's events coordinator who was heading to her car with a stack of programs under her arm. Great turnout tonight. Sorry about the mess. The high school jazz band got a little excited with their confetti cannons. Tom smiled, the expression crinkling the corners of his eyes. No problem. That's why you've got me, right? We're lucky to have you, Rita said and meant it. In the 8 months since Tom had started the cleaning job, he'd become known for his thoroughness and quiet reliability. What no one knew, what Tom rarely thought about anymore, was that he had once stood on stages much grander than this community center's modest platform. Oh, and just so you know, Rita added, the piano tuner is coming tomorrow morning before the children's recital. The Steinway's all yours tonight, but please don't move it. Mr. Hargrove from the board donated it last month, and he's very particular about its care. Tom nodded. I'll just dust around it. Have a good night. As Rita's taillights disappeared down the street, Tom entered the building through the side door, punching in the security code. The center was eerily quiet now, the fluorescent lights in the hallway buzzing faintly. He made his way to the supply closet, mentally planning his cleaning route. Main hallway first, then bathrooms, then the auditorium with its scattered programs and inevitable popcorn trail. He pushed his cleaning cart down the hallway, the wheels squeaking slightly on the worn linoleum. The job was solitary, but Tom didn't mind. After a day of warehouse noise and trying to be cheerful for the kids, the quiet was soothing. Sometimes he sang while he worked, old songs that Karen had loved, tunes from when they were young and full of dreams. Sometimes he just thought about practical things, what to pack for the kids' lunches, whether Ben's sneakers would last another month, if he could pick up an extra shift next weekend to cover Lily's upcoming field trip. The hallway and bathrooms took an hour. Finally, Tom pushed through the double doors into the auditorium. The mess wasn't as bad as he'd expected. Programs scattered on seats, a few empty water bottles, the confetti Rita had mentioned sprinkled near the stage. He started at the back, working methodically forward row by row. As he approached the stage, the grand piano caught his eye. It was indeed beautiful, glossy black and imposing against the simple backdrop. Tom hadn't paid much attention when it had arrived last month, but now, in the quiet of the empty auditorium, it seemed to call to him. He climbed the steps to the stage, pushing his cart ahead of him. The confetti had made its way up here too, little bright paper stars and circles scattered around the piano bench. Tom knelt to sweep them up, his knees protesting slightly. As he cleaned, memories stirred, distant echoes of another life. Tom had been just 17 when he'd received the scholarship to the conservatory in New York. His parents, hard-working people with little education but immense pride in their son, had scraped together enough for his bus ticket and first month's room and board. "You'll make it," his father had said, rough hands clasping Tom's shoulders. "You've got what it takes." For 3 years, Tom had thrived in that world of music. His professors spoke of concert halls, of European tours, of the rare gift he possessed. Then came the call that his father had suffered a stroke. Medical bills mounted. His mother couldn't manage alone. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. Family came first. Tom returned home taking whatever jobs he could find. He meant to go back someday, but somehow someday never came. He met Karen at 25. She worked at the local library and played guitar in a folk band on weekends. She loved his playing, encouraged him to keep music in his life. For a while, he gave piano lessons and played at weddings and local events. But when the kids came along, they needed more stability, better health insurance. The factory job paid better than teaching piano to reluctant children. Eventually, he played less and less, and then hardly at all. Tom finished sweeping up the confetti and stood, his back to the piano. He should finish the rest of the auditorium. There were still the aisles to vacuum and the trash to collect. But something made him turn around. The piano bench was empty, inviting. Tom glanced at his watch again, 10:30 p.m. He was making good time. No one would know if he took just 5 minutes. He sat down slowly, setting his work gloves aside. The bench felt right somehow. The height perfect, the polished wood smooth beneath him. He lifted the cover gently, revealing the keys, pristine white and black, waiting. For a moment, Tom just looked, not touching, afraid almost that they would reject him after all this time. Then carefully he placed his hands in position. His fingers, calloused now from years of physical labor, felt stiff and clumsy. He began with something simple, a C major scale up and down. The notes rang clear in the empty auditorium. His right hand remembered the movement, muscle memory awakening after years of dormancy. He tried a G scale next, then a simple chord progression. It was like speaking a language he'd once been fluent in, rusty at first, but coming back with each passing moment. Tom closed his eyes, letting his hands find their way. Almost without thinking, he began to play a piece he had once known by heart, Debussy's Clair de Lune. He stumbled at first, missing notes, his timing off. But he kept going, and gradually, like water finding its natural path, the music began to flow. The soft, dreamy notes filled the auditorium. Tom's shoulders relaxed, his breathing deepened. He wasn't playing perfectly, far from it, but something was happening that went beyond technical skill. The music was reaching into places long closed off, stirring emotions he rarely allowed himself to feel. He thought of Karen, of how she would sit and listen to him play on the old upright they'd bought when they were first married. He thought of his children, of how Lily's small fingers were now learning to create beauty of their own. He thought of all the years when music had been pushed aside for more practical concerns, necessary choices, but choices that had cost him something precious. As the final notes of Clair de Lune faded, Tom remained still, eyes closed, hands resting lightly on the keys. The silence that followed seemed to hold something significant. Not regret exactly, but acknowledgement of a part of himself long neglected. A sound from the back of the auditorium startled him, the soft click of a door closing. Tom's eyes flew open, his heart racing suddenly. Had someone been listening? Embarrassment washed over him. He was the janitor, not a performer. What would people think? He stood quickly, closing the piano cover with care. No one appeared at the door. Perhaps he had imagined the sound, or perhaps whoever it was had already gone. Either way, it was time to get back to work. The floors wouldn't vacuum themselves, and Tom still had to get home in time for a few hours of sleep before the warehouse shift began at 6. As he pushed the cleaning cart down from the stage, Tom felt strangely lighter. The music still echoed in his mind, and his fingers tingled with remembered movement. It had been just a small moment, a brief return to something once central to his life. Tomorrow would be the same as today. Work, responsibilities, the constant calculations of a parent trying to make ends meet. But something had shifted ever so slightly. A door that had been closed for years had opened just a crack. Tom didn't know what, if anything, would come of this quiet moment at the piano. But as he finished cleaning the auditorium, he found himself humming, a melody he hadn't thought of in years, but which now seemed to be working its way back to the surface note by note, like an old friend returning after a long absence. The next morning came too quickly. Tom's alarm blared at 5:15 a.m., and he fumbled to silence it before it woke the kids. His body protested as he swung his legs over the side of the bed. 4 hours of sleep wasn't enough, but it was all he could manage most days. He moved quietly through the small house, making coffee and packing lunches. 2 peanut butter sandwiches, no crust for Ben, apple slices, and the last of the granola bars. He'd need to go shopping this weekend. Tom scribbled a note for the kids. Don't forget Mrs. Walker picking you up after school. Practice your instruments. Love you, Dad. The warehouse was already humming with activity when Tom arrived. Forklifts beeped as they moved between tall shelves stacked with merchandise. His supervisor, Dale, nodded as Tom clocked in. Reynolds, you're on loading dock 3 today. Tom nodded back. He preferred the loading dock to inventory. Less walking, though harder on the back. He pulled on his work gloves, trying not to wince as his fingers protested. They felt strangely tender today, as if they'd been doing something more strenuous than their usual work. The piano. Last night came rushing back. Tom hadn't thought about his brief moment at the keyboard since leaving the community center, too exhausted to dwell on it. Now, as he lifted the first of many boxes he would move today, he found himself hearing the echoes of Debussy in his mind. You okay there, Reynolds? Dale was looking at him strangely. You zoned out for a second. Just tired, Tom replied, focusing on the task at hand. Long night. The morning passed in a blur of cardboard boxes, packing slips, and the steady rhythm of loading trucks. During his break, Tom sat alone in the corner of the break room, drinking coffee from his thermos. His phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Walker, his elderly neighbor who helped with the kids. Ben forgot his math homework. Found it and dropped it off at school for him. Tom texted back a quick thanks. What would he do without Mrs. Walker? Since Karen died, the old woman had become like family, refusing payment beyond the occasional grocery run and insisting that looking after Lily and Ben gave her purpose. Back on the loading dock, Tom found himself moving to a rhythm only he could hear. It wasn't conscious, his hands were lifting, his back was bending, but in his mind he was playing. Fragments of pieces he had once known floated through his thoughts. A Mozart sonata, a Chopin nocturne, pieces he hadn't played in 15 years, but that somehow still lived in his fingers. Earth to Tom. His co-worker Jerry waved a hand in front of his face. Break's over, man. Where are you today? Tom shook his head. Sorry, just thinking. Dangerous habit, Jerry said with a grin, slapping Tom's shoulder as he passed. By the time his shift ended at 2:30, Tom's back was aching, but his mind felt strangely clear. Instead of heading straight home, he found himself driving toward the public library. He hadn't been inside for months. No time for reading when you were working 2 jobs and raising kids alone. But today something pulled him there. The library was quiet, just a few retirees browsing the magazines and a couple of students at the computers. Tom nodded to the librarian, not Nancy, who had worked here when Karen was alive, but someone new, and made his way to the music section. The shelf of music books was small, tucked between cookbooks and travel guides. Tom ran his fingers along the spines. Piano for beginners. The joy of classical piano. Master the keyboard in 30 days. Nothing that spoke to him. Then his eye caught a thicker volume. Returning to the piano, a guide for adult players. He pulled it out, flipping through pages of exercises and simplified arrangements of familiar pieces. The introduction spoke directly to him. Whether you played as a child or studied seriously in your youth, returning to the piano after years away can feel like coming home to a place both familiar and strange. Tom closed the book. He wasn't returning to anything. Last night had been a fluke, a moment of weakness. He had no piano at home, no time for hobbies, no money for sheet music. He was about to put the book back when the library door opened and a familiar voice called his name. Tom Reynolds. I thought that was you. Rita from the community center was walking toward him, her arms full of children's books. Picking up something for Lily and Ben? Just browsing, Tom said, hastily shoving the piano book back on the shelf. On my way home from work. Rita glanced at the section where he was standing. Are you a musician? I didn't know that. No, not really. Tom shifted uncomfortably. I mean, I played a little when I was younger, but the kids' recital went well this morning, Rita interrupted, apparently not noticing his discomfort. That new piano makes such a difference. The old upright we had was practically falling apart. Tom nodded, eager to change the subject. I should get going. The kids will be home soon. Oh, before you go. Rita fumbled in her bag, trying not to drop her stack of books. What time will you be at the center tonight? There's another event, poetry reading, but it's just in the small meeting room. The main auditorium will be free. Same time, Tom said. 9 to midnight. Perfect, Rita smiled. See you then. Tom left the library, the conversation with Rita trailing behind him like a question mark. Why had he felt so awkward talking about music? It was just a hobby he'd once had, a path not taken. Everyone had those. At home, he found Mrs. Walker and the kids making cookies in the kitchen. The house smelled of vanilla and chocolate, and for a moment, Tom could almost pretend that everything was normal, that Karen might walk in at any minute. "Dad," Ben came running, chocolate smeared across one cheek. "I got an A on my science project. Mrs. Walker helped me fix the solar system model this morning." "That's great, buddy." Tom ruffled his son's hair, then glanced at Mrs. Walker. "Thanks for that. And for the homework rescue." "Happy to help," she said, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "These two are a joy." Lily was sitting at the kitchen table, her homework spread out around her. At 12, she was already showing signs of the woman she would become. Serious, focused, her dark hair falling across her face as she worked. She looked up as Tom approached. "Dad, can you help me with this math? It's about angles in music." Tom looked at the worksheet. "Angles in music?" "We're learning about how math and music are connected," Lily explained. "Did you know that an octave is a frequency ratio of 2-1? And that the perfect fifth is 3-2? Tom sat down beside her, looking at the diagrams on the paper. "I did know that, actually." Lily looked surprised. "You did?" "I took music theory classes once," Tom said. The words felt strange coming out of his mouth, as if someone else were speaking. "A long time ago." "When you were at music school?" Lily asked. "Mom told us you were going to be a concert pianist." Tom felt a pang. He and Karen had rarely discussed his past with the kids. It seemed irrelevant to their life now, but apparently Karen had shared more than he realized. "That was the plan for a while," he said carefully. "But plans change. Do you still play?" Lily's question was innocent, but it hit Tom like a physical blow. "Not really," he said. "Not for a long time." "Why not?" Ben had wandered over, still licking chocolate from his fingers. Tom looked at his children's curious faces and felt a wave of something he couldn't name. Not quite regret. Not quite longing. "Life gets busy," he said finally. "Sometimes you have to set some things aside to make room for what's important." "Like us?" Ben asked. Tom pulled him close. "Exactly like you." Later, after dinner and homework and making sure both kids had practiced their instruments, Tom got ready for his night job. As he was leaving, Lily stopped him at the door. "Dad, Mrs. Walker showed me some videos of pianists on her tablet today, after we talked about my math homework." She hesitated. "Do you think you could play for us sometime? If you found a piano somewhere?" Tom felt his throat tighten. "I'm really out of practice, Lily." "That's okay," she said. "I mess up all the time on my violin." "You still listen?" Tom kissed the top of her head. "We'll see. Now be good for Mrs. Walker. I'll see you in the morning." The drive to the community center was quiet. Tom usually listened to the radio, but tonight he preferred silence. His conversation with Lily had stirred something, a question he hadn't allowed himself to consider in years. What if he did start playing again? Not professionally, of course. That dream was long gone, but just for himself, for his kids. As he pulled into the parking lot, Tom noticed fewer cars than usual. The poetry reading must be a smaller event than last night's showcase. He gathered his things and headed inside, nodding to the security guard. Rita was in the lobby, putting up flyers for upcoming events. "Oh, Tom. Good timing. The poetry group is just finishing up. They should be out in about 15 minutes. Tom nodded. "I'll start with the hallways then." "Perfect." Rita hesitated, then added, "The auditorium's empty all night, and the piano tuner said everything's in great shape." Tom looked at her sharply. Had she somehow heard him playing last night? But Rita's face showed nothing but casual friendliness. "Good to know," he said, and headed for the supply closet, wondering what the night would bring. The hallways were quickly cleaned, and Tom found himself lingering outside the auditorium doors. The poetry group had cleared out 20 minutes ago, and the community center had fallen into its nighttime quiet. That peculiar silence of a public building after hours, when even the air seemed to be resting. Tom pushed his cart through the double doors and into the darkened auditorium. Only the safety lights were on, casting long shadows across the empty seats. The stage was dimly lit, the grand piano a black silhouette against the back wall. He went about his usual routine, sweeping the aisles, collecting forgotten programs, emptying trash bins, but his eyes kept returning to the piano. Lily's question echoed in his mind. Do you think you could play for us sometime? When his cleaning duties brought him to the stage at last, Tom stood looking at the piano for a long moment. Yesterday he had played on impulse without much thought. Today felt different, more deliberate, more like a choice. Tom set his cleaning supplies aside and walked to the piano. He sat down on the bench, adjusted its height, and rested his hands on the closed cover. Then slowly he lifted it. The keys gleamed in the dim light. Tom placed his fingers on them, feeling their cool smoothness. He began to play. Softly at first, just simple scales and exercises, warming up fingers stiff from years of disuse. C major, G major, D major, arpeggios, chords, inversions. The technical foundation was still there, buried under years of neglect but not destroyed. After 15 minutes of exercises, Tom paused, flexing his fingers. Already they felt more limber, more alive. He reached into his memory for something more substantial. A piece began to form under his hands. Beethoven's Pathetique Sonata, the second movement. He had played it for his conservatory audition, had once known every note by heart. The opening chords were hesitant, the timing uneven. Tom stopped, took a breath, and began again. This time the melody emerged more confidently, the gentle adagio filling the empty auditorium. It wasn't perfect, far from it. His technique was rusty, his dynamics unrefined. But as he continued playing, something shifted. The music began to flow not just from his fingers, but from somewhere deeper. Tom closed his eyes, letting muscle memory guide him. Images flashed through his mind. His first piano teacher, Mrs. Abernathy, with her cats and peppermint candies. The conservatory's practice rooms where he'd spent countless hours. Karen, pregnant with Lily, falling asleep on the couch as he played their old upright. The final notes of the movement lingered in the air. Tom sat motionless, his hand still resting on the keys, caught in the spell of memory and music. Then he heard it, the unmistakable sound of someone shifting in a seat. His eyes flew open. "Hello?" he called, scanning the darkened auditorium. "Is someone there?" A figure rose from a seat near the back and walked down the center aisle toward the stage. As it emerged into the light, Tom recognized the community center's director, Howard Chen. "I'm sorry," Tom said quickly, standing up from the bench. "I know I should be cleaning. Howard held up a hand. "Please don't apologize." He climbed the steps to the stage, his expression thoughtful. "That was beautiful." Tom felt his face grow warm. "It was pretty rough. I haven't played seriously in a long time." "That's not what I heard." Howard gestured to the piano. "May I?" Tom stepped aside, watching as Howard ran a hand along the piano's glossy surface. "This instrument was donated by my uncle, Arthur Hargrove. He's on our board. Rita mentioned that." Tom shifted uncomfortably. "I hope it's okay that I played it. I made sure my hands were clean and I didn't move it." Howard smiled. "My uncle donated it to be played, not to be a museum piece." He looked at Tom curiously. "Where did you study?" The question caught Tom off guard. "How did you know I studied?" "Beethoven's Pathetique isn't something you just pick up. The way you approached it, even with the rough spots, that's years of training." Tom hesitated, then decided there was no harm in answering. "Eastman. For 3 years." Howard's eyebrows rose. "Eastman School of Music? That's one of the top conservatories in the country." "I didn't finish," Tom said quickly. "Family issues. Had to come home." Howard nodded, seeming to understand there was more to the story but not pressing. "And now you work here." "And at Mayfield Warehouse during the day." Tom glanced at his cleaning cart. "I should really get back to work." "Wait." Howard appeared to be considering something. "Our regular pianist for the children's music program quit last week. Family moving to Seattle. We've been looking for a replacement." He paused. "It's just twice a week, Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. Pays $25 an hour." Tom stared at him. "Are you offering me a job?" "As a pianist?" "More of a music assistant, really. Accompanying the kids, helping them learn basic theory, nothing too advanced." Howard smiled. "Though after hearing you play, I'd say you're overqualified." Tom's mind raced. The extra money would be welcome, more than welcome. And the hours might work. If Mrs. Walker could watch Lily and Ben on those afternoons. "I don't know," he said slowly. "It's been a long time since I've played regularly. And my schedule is pretty tight." "Think about it," Howard said, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a business card. "Call me tomorrow if you're interested." "No pressure." He glanced at his watch. I should let you get back to work. I just came back to grab my laptop. After Howard left, Tom stood on the stage for a long moment, the business card in his hand feeling strangely heavy. Then he tucked it into his pocket and returned to his cleaning cart. The rest of his shift passed in a blur of vacuuming and polishing, his mind elsewhere. When he finally locked up the community center just after midnight, Tom sat in his car without starting the engine. The business card seemed to burn in his pocket. $25 an hour doing something he once loved. It seemed too good to be true, but was it practical? Could he really add one more thing to his overloaded life? And after so many years away from music, would he even be any good at teaching it? The drive home was quick on the empty roads. As Tom pulled into his driveway, he saw that the living room light was still on. He found Mrs. Walker dozing in the armchair, a mystery novel open on her lap. "Everything okay?" he asked softly, not wanting to startle her. Mrs. Walker blinked awake. "Oh, Tom, yes, all fine. Lily had a bit of trouble sleeping, that's all." Wanted to talk about her mother. Tom felt a pang. "I'm sorry you had to deal with that. Nonsense. Those children are as dear to me as my own grandkids." Mrs. Walker gathered her things. "She asked me more about your piano playing. I didn't have much to tell her." "What did she want to know?" Tom asked, walking Mrs. Walker to the door. "If you were really good. If you played in concerts." Mrs. Walker patted his arm. "I told her she should ask you herself." After seeing Mrs. Walker safely to her house next door, Tom checked on the kids. Ben was sprawled across his bed, one arm dangling over the edge, sleeping the carefree sleep of 9-year-olds everywhere. Lily was curled on her side, her dark hair spread across the pillow in a way that reminded Tom painfully of Karen. As he tucked the blanket more securely around her, Lily stirred. "Dad?" she murmured sleepily. "It's me, sweetheart. Go back to sleep." Lily's eyes opened fully. "Did you play the piano tonight?" Tom hesitated, then nodded. "A little bit. Was it nice?" "Yeah," Tom said softly. "It was nice." Lily smiled and closed her eyes. "Mom always said you made the piano sing." Tom's throat tightened. "Did she?" "Mm-hmm. She said you had magic hands." Long after Lily had fallen back asleep, Tom sat at the kitchen table, Howard's business card propped against the salt shaker. Magic hands. Once, maybe. Now his hands were rough with calluses, the nails short and practical, the knuckles slightly swollen from years of physical labor. He flexed his fingers, remembering how they had moved across the keys tonight. Not magic, but not entirely gone either. Something remained. Some ember of what he had once been, what he had once loved. Tom pulled out his phone and checked his calendar. His warehouse shift ended at 2:30. The kids got out of school at DU. Seeing if Mrs. Walker could pick them up on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The community center was only 10 minutes from their house. He could teach until 5:30, be home by 5:45, still have time for dinner and homework before heading back for his night job. It would be tight. He would be exhausted, but the extra money would help with Lily's braces next year, maybe even allow them to start a small college fund, and he would be playing again. Tom picked up the business card and turned it over in his fingers. Then he set his phone alarm for 9 a.m., early enough to call Howard before his warehouse shift, late enough to get a few hours sleep. As he finally crawled into bed, Tom realized he was hearing music in his head, not Beethoven this time, but a simple lullaby he used to play for Lily and Ben when they were babies. His fingers twitched slightly against the sheets, finding the notes, remembering. The next morning, Tom woke before his alarm. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting stripes across his bedroom wall. For a moment he lay still, listening to the quiet sounds of the house, the hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the hallway clock, the distant chirping of birds outside. Then he remembered Howard's business card still on the kitchen table. He reached for his phone. 7:42 a.m. Earlier than he needed to be up, but too late to go back to sleep. Tom got out of bed, wincing at the stiffness in his shoulders. Too many boxes moved yesterday. In the bathroom mirror, he caught sight of himself. The lines around his eyes deeper than he remembered, gray beginning to streak his dark hair at the temples. When had that happened? The kids were still asleep as he made coffee, the weekend allowing them a few extra hours of rest. Tom sat at the kitchen table, Howard's card in one hand, his coffee mug in the other. $25 an hour, 4 hours a week, an extra $200 a month. Not enough to change their lives dramatically, but enough to make things a little easier, and it would mean playing again, really playing, not just stolen moments in an empty auditorium. At 9 a.m. exactly, Tom dialed the number on the card. "Howard Chen," came the answer after 2 rings. "Mr. Chen, this is Tom Reynolds, from the community center." "Tom, good morning. And please, it's Howard." Tom took a deep breath. "I'm calling about the pianist position. I'd like to take it if it's still available." "Excellent." Howard sounded genuinely pleased. "Could you come in this afternoon? Say around 4? Just to go over the details and show you the program materials." Tom hesitated. Saturday was grocery shopping day, laundry day, the day for all the household chores he couldn't fit into the week. "Could we make it 3? I need to be home by 5 for the kids. When 3 works perfectly. I'll see you then." After hanging up, Tom stood in the kitchen, a strange mixture of excitement and anxiety bubbling in his chest. What had he just done? The sound of small feet padding down the hallway interrupted his thoughts. Ben appeared, hair sticking up in all directions, still in his dinosaur pajamas. "Dad, can we have pancakes?" Tom smiled, pushing his worries aside. "Sure, buddy. Go wake your sister." The morning passed in a blur of pancakes, laundry, and grocery shopping. Tom didn't mention the new job to the kids yet. No sense getting them excited until he was sure it would work out. At 2:30, he asked Mrs. Walker if she could watch them for a couple of hours. "Of course," she said, settling into his armchair with her knitting. "Everything all right?" "Just an appointment," Tom said vaguely. "I shouldn't be long." The community center was busier than he was used to seeing it, the parking lot half full with Saturday activities. A children's basketball game was letting out as Tom arrived, the lobby filled with chattering kids and parents. He made his way through the crowd, feeling oddly out of place. He had only ever been here at night when the building was empty and quiet. Howard was waiting in his office, a small room off the main hallway lined with filing cabinets and community event posters. "Tom, come in. Have a seat." The job, Howard explained, was straightforward. The center ran an after-school music program for elementary and middle school students. Twice a week, Tom would accompany the children as they practiced, help them with basic music theory, and occasionally teach simple piano to beginners. The previous pianist, a college student, had left detailed notes on each child's progress. "We have 12 students currently," Howard said, sliding a folder across the desk. "Ages 8 to 13. Various skill levels. Nothing too advanced." Tom flipped through the folder. Sheet music, attendance sheets, progress notes. His eyes caught on a name. Zoe Walker, age 11, violin. "Mrs. Walker's granddaughter takes lessons here?" Tom asked, surprised. Howard nodded. "Every Tuesday. She's quite talented." Tom hadn't known. Mrs. Walker had never mentioned it. But then why would she? To her, he was just the hard-working single dad who lived next door, not a musician. "The kids are always excited about the spring recital," Howard continued. "That's in May, so you'd have plenty of time to prepare them. And of course, we'd want you to play something as well." "A solo piece?" Tom looked up sharply. "A solo?" "I don't think, nothing fancy," Howard assured him. "Just a short piece to inspire the students. Show them what they're working toward." Tom wasn't sure about that, but he nodded anyway. "When would I start?" "Is Tuesday too soon?" "The kids have missed 2 sessions already. They're getting antsy. Tuesday, 2 days from now." Tom swallowed. "Tuesday works." As he was leaving, Howard handed him a set of keys. "For the music room in the back entrance. Sometimes Rita or I can't be here to let you in." He smiled. "Welcome aboard, Tom." The drive home was a tangle of emotions. Excitement at returning to music. Anxiety about teaching, something he hadn't done in years. Worry about fitting one more responsibility into his already packed life. And underneath it all, a small voice wondering if he was making a mistake, reaching back towards something that belonged to his past. At home, Tom found the kids and Mrs. Walker in the backyard. Ben was showing off his cartwheel skills while Lily read on the porch swing. Mrs. Walker looked up from her knitting as Tom approached. "How was your appointment?" "Good," Tom said, sitting beside her. "Actually, it was a job interview. A part-time position at the community center." Mrs. Walker's eyebrows rose. "Another job?" "Tom, you already work yourself to the bone. It's just twice a week. Teaching piano for the children's music program." Her knitting needle stopped. "Piano, you?" Tom nodded. "I used to play. Seriously, I mean. Before the kids were born." Mrs. Walker was quiet for a moment. "Karen mentioned it once. Said you were very talented." I didn't realize it. She trailed off, then smiled. Well, this explains why Lily was asking about you playing. Actually, Tom said, lowering his voice so the kids couldn't hear, I saw in the student files that your granddaughter takes violin lessons there. Zoe? Mrs. Walker's face brightened. She does. Started last year. Loves it. Then her expression turned thoughtful. You know, I could pick up Lily and Ben along with Zoe on Tuesdays. They could do homework in the community center library until you're done teaching. It was exactly the solution Tom had been worrying about. That would be perfect. But Thursdays too? I don't want to impose. It's no imposition. Those children are family to me. Mrs. Walker patted his hand. You should have told me sooner you were a pianist. All these years I had no idea. That night after the kids were in bed, Tom found himself sitting on the edge of his bed, looking at his hands. They were workers' hands now. Strong, calloused, with short practical nails and a small scar across the right palm from a warehouse accident last year. Not a pianist's hands anymore, but they remembered. Last night at the piano they had remembered. Tom reached under his bed and pulled out a battered cardboard box, one of the few things he'd saved from his music school days. Inside, wrapped in an old t-shirt, was a metronome. It had been a gift from his first serious piano teacher back when he was 14. He wound it up, listening to its steady tick-tock, tick-tock. The rhythm was still perfect after all these years. Sunday passed in a flurry of weekend chores and helping the kids with homework. Monday was the usual rush of work and school and dinner and bedtime. And suddenly it was Tuesday afternoon, and Tom was standing outside the community center's music room, his heart hammering against his ribs. Through the window in the door, he could see them, a dozen children with their instruments. Violins, flutes, a cello, a trumpet, and 3 seated at small keyboards. They were chatting, laughing, some practicing snippets of music. One boy was using his flute as a makeshift sword, dueling with a violin bow. Tom took a deep breath, straightened his shoulders, and opened the door. The room fell silent as he walked in. 12 pairs of eyes fixed on him with the frank curiosity of children. A girl with red braids spoke first. Are you the new piano teacher? I'm Mr. Reynolds, Tom said, his voice steadier than he expected. And yes, I'll be working with you on Tuesdays and Thursdays. A boy with glasses raised his hand. Can you play something for us? Mrs. Winters always played for us first thing. Tom glanced at the piano in the corner. A simple upright, not the grand from the auditorium, but well maintained by the look of it. He hesitated only a moment before nodding. All right, let me play something and then we'll get to work. He sat down at the piano, adjusting the bench, suddenly conscious of the audience. These weren't sleepy music lovers at an evening concert. These weren't even the empty seats of the auditorium at night. These were children, bright-eyed, fidgety, honest to a fault what to play. His mind raced through possibilities before settling on Chopin's Raindrop Prelude. Short enough to hold their attention, technically impressive enough to establish his credentials, but with a melody they might connect with. Tom placed his hands on the keys, took a breath, and began to play. The gentle, repetitive pattern flowed from his fingers like raindrops falling on a quiet pond. The room was silent except for the music. When the final notes faded, there was a moment of perfect stillness. Then the red-headed girl spoke again. Whoa, Tom felt his face warm slightly. That was Chopin. Now let's see where you all are in your lessons. For the next hour, Tom worked with each student briefly, getting a sense of their abilities, their challenges, their personalities. Some were serious, some were there because their parents made them come, but all seemed willing to give the new teacher a chance. As they were packing up, Tom noticed a familiar face peering through the window in the door. Lily. Their eyes met, and her face broke into a smile of such pride that Tom felt his heart swell, teaching piano. Who would have thought? 3 months passed in a blur of seasons changing and routines adjusting. Winter melted into spring, and Tom found himself settling into a new rhythm of life. Still busy, still demanding, but somehow more balanced than before. Tuesdays and Thursdays became the highlight of his week. After finishing his warehouse shift, he would hurry to the community center, where 12 young musicians awaited him. At first, he had been nervous, unsure of his teaching abilities after so many years away from music. But children, he discovered, were forgiving students. They didn't care about his calloused hands or the bags under his eyes from too little sleep. They cared only that he listened when they played, that he heard their mistakes and their triumphs, that he made the piano sing in ways that inspired them to try harder with their own instruments. The spring recital was now just 2 weeks away, and today's Tuesday session had a particular energy to it. The music room buzzed with a mixture of excitement and nerves as the children practiced their pieces. "Mr. Reynolds, I still can't get this part right," said Pete, the serious boy with glasses who played the cello. He pointed to a measure in his sheet music where the notes climbed into a difficult register. Tom sat down beside him. "Let's break it down into smaller sections. Just these 4 notes first." As Pete worked through the passage, Tom glanced around the room. Zoe was helping one of the younger violin students with her bow grip. The 2 keyboard players were practicing a duet, their heads bent together in concentration. The flutist, who had once used his instrument as a sword, was now playing a delicate Mozart piece with surprising sensitivity. They had all grown so much in 3 months. Not just in their musical abilities, but in confidence, in focus, in the way they supported each other. Tom felt a swell of pride that had nothing to do with his own accomplishments. After the lesson, Tom found Lily and Ben waiting for him in the library, as they did twice a week now. Mrs. Walker had made good on her offer to bring them along with Zoe, and the arrangement had worked out better than Tom could have hoped. The kids did their homework, read books, sometimes sat in on the last few minutes of the music lesson. "Dad," Ben bounded up, waving a paper, "I got an A on my science test." "That's fantastic, buddy." Tom high-fived his son, then turned to Lily. "How was your day?" Lily looked up from her math homework. "Good, Mrs. Walker said we need milk and bread." Tom nodded. Their neighbor had become even more involved in their lives these past months, sometimes even starting dinner on the nights Tom taught. He didn't know how he would manage without her. As they walked to the car, Ben skipping ahead, Lily fell into step beside Tom. "Dad, are you nervous about playing at the recital?" The question caught him off guard. Howard had insisted that Tom perform a solo piece as part of the program. "A little," he admitted. "It's been a long time since I played for an audience." "You'll be great," Lily said with the absolute certainty of a 12-year-old. "Everyone says so." "Everyone?" "The kids in your class. I hear them talking when I come to the door. They think you're amazing." Tom felt warmth spread through his chest. "They're good kids. What are you going to play?" Tom had been wrestling with this question for weeks. Howard had suggested something flashy, something to showcase his technical skills. But that didn't feel right somehow. "I'm not sure yet," he said, still deciding. That night, after the kids were in bed, Tom sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open, scrolling through the digital sheet music he'd been collecting. Nothing felt quite right for the recital. The flashy pieces seemed like showing off. The simple pieces didn't challenge him enough. He wanted something meaningful, something that spoke to his journey these past months. His phone buzzed with a text from Howard. "How's the solo piece coming?" "Program needs to go to printer by Friday." Tom sighed. He needed to decide. As he was about to close his laptop, an email notification appeared. The subject line caught his eye. "Piano tuning reminder. Steinway Grand." The email was from Rita at the community center, reminding him that the grand piano in the auditorium would be tuned tomorrow morning in preparation for the recital. Tom had almost forgotten that the recital would be held in the main auditorium, not the small music room where they usually practiced. The children would be performing on the very stage where, just 3 months ago, he had been pushing a cleaning cart and rediscovering his own connection to music. Suddenly, Tom knew what he wanted to play. The night of the recital arrived with all the nervous energy of any performance. The auditorium was filled with parents, siblings, grandparents, and friends. Programs rustled. Children in their best clothes fidgeted backstage, and Howard bustled about making last-minute adjustments to the lighting. Tom moved among his students, offering encouragement, helping with tuning, reminding them of the breathing exercises they had practiced. "Remember, if you make a mistake, just keep going. No one but you knows what was supposed to come next." "Even you, Mr. Reynolds?" asked Zoe, adjusting her violin strings. "Even me," Tom assured her. "Music isn't about perfection. It's about connection." Soon it was time. Howard welcomed the audience, explained the program, and introduced the first student. One by one they performed, some with confidence, some with visible nerves, all with the earnestness of young musicians who had worked hard to reach this moment. Tom watched from the wings, his heart swelling with pride at each bow. each smile of relief when a piece was completed. These were his students now. 3 months ago, he had been cleaning the very stage they performed on, not daring to imagine himself as a teacher, as a musician again. After the last student performed, Howard returned to the microphone. Before we close our program, we have a special performance from our piano instructor, Mr. Tom Reynolds. Tom stepped onto the stage, nodding to the applause. As he sat at the grand piano, the same one he had played in secret that night 3 months ago, his eyes found his children in the second row. Ben was bouncing in his seat with excitement. Lily sat still, her face solemn, expectant. Beside them, Mrs. Walker dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "Tonight," Tom said, leaning briefly toward the microphone, "I'd like to play a piece that has special meaning for me and my family. It's called Coming Home, and it's something I've been working on these past few months." He hadn't told anyone he would be playing his own composition. The piece had started as fragments, melodies that came to him while driving to work, harmonies that drifted through his mind as he fell asleep. Gradually, he had pieced them together into something whole. Tom placed his hands on the keys and began to play. The opening was gentle, questioning, the sound of someone testing forgotten waters. Then the melody expanded, growing more confident, weaving themes that spoke of work and struggle, of loss and love, of finding unexpected joy. The middle section incorporated subtle echoes of the pieces his students had played tonight, a musical acknowledgement of how their journeys had become intertwined with his. And the final movement built to a resolution that felt like acceptance, not of defeat, but of a life that had taken unexpected turns and still found its way to beauty. As the final notes faded, there was a moment of complete silence. Tom sat with his hands still on the keys, his eyes closed, aware of his own heartbeat, of his breath, of the perfect stillness of the moment. Then the applause began. Tentative at first, then building, spreading through the auditorium like a wave. Tom stood, bowed, his eyes finding his children again. Ben was clapping wildly, a huge grin splitting his face. And Lily, his serious, thoughtful Lily, was crying, her face alight with something like wonder. As Tom left the stage, his students surrounded him, their voices overlapping in excitement and praise. Howard shook his hand firmly. "That was extraordinary, Tom. I had no idea." "Neither did I," Tom admitted. Later, as they were packing up to leave, Rita approached him. "The board was very impressed tonight," she said. "They've approved funding for an expanded music program in the fall. Howard wants you to run it. Full-time position with benefits." Tom stared at her. "Full-time? As a music teacher?" Rita nodded. "Think about it. No rush to decide." That night, long after the kids were asleep, Tom sat on the porch steps looking up at the stars. A full-time music teaching position. It would mean giving up the warehouse job, maybe even the night cleaning job eventually. It would mean a complete change of direction, a second chance at the life he had once thought lost to him. From inside the house came the soft sound of Lily practicing her violin, a new habit she had developed since seeing him teach. The simple melody drifted through the open window like a question waiting for an answer. Tom looked down at his hands. Worker's hands, father's hands, and now, once again, a musician's hands. They had carried him this far. They would carry him forward. He already knew what his answer would be.